Thank you for joining me today on Nancy's Handcrafted Creations. I'm Nancy, and today we are going to make this adorable little fall gnome. It's getting toward fall, so I thought it's about time we do something for fall. And I got all my fabric at JoAnn's. I'm going to show you how I made his hat. I hand sewed it, so I did try to hot glue it, and even his arms, and they just didn't work for me, hot gluing. There is another way we can do an arm, and I did sew these by machine. And so I'm going to show you how I did his feet. I even made him a little rake. He turned out very adorable. And so I'm going to show you how we put this all together. And if you want to see that, stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would love for you to join my crafting community and click on that bell. Hit the subscribe button and then click on the bell, and clicking on the bell will notify you when I upload a new video. If you already have subscribed to my channel, thank you for supporting me and being on this journey with me. I have been just cleaning my house and I haven't uploaded very many videos, and I'm trying to get back into doing that, so I apologize for the delay. And it's getting toward craft shows, so I want to do some ideas for like a craft fair series, so stay tuned for that also. So let's get crafting. So let's get started and make our little autumn gnome, our fall gnome. I also made this one, and I had got this fabric at JoAnn's also in the fall, with the fall material. And then I had this red, kind of a darker red, and it's really stiff fabric. So when I did my brim, I doubled it because I wanted it to have some body, some stiffness to it. And this I'm just going to show you how I cut it. So we're going to set these guys aside. And so first of all, we'll start off with our body. And let's do that, and we'll get that done. And that's how the same way I do all my bodies: a sock, some rice, and some stuffing, and then I usually use some kind of fleece as my main fabric for my body. So I pulled the green out of the hat with the colors that were in there. And I tried to do the green. This gold green goes good with this too for the brim, so you could do that. You could do any fabric, but this I just found was really pretty. I went the other night to try to get some more from JoAnn's, but with COVID they close early. So and this is still a kid's sock, but they get they get so stretchy that you end up having this big old gnome. Okay, so we're just going to do that, and then we're going to bring up our corners, and then we're going to bring in those other corners, and you're going to grab all of that. And my thread is on the floor, and I usually double. I use like a really strong crochet thread. If you can pull it and it breaks, it's not strong enough, so that's why I double it. You can use yarn. Your yarn works really good. You can even get that at the Dollar Tree for $1, and that skein will last you for a long time. So then you're going to pull your thread and then tie a knot. I'm going to cut some of this off, and then we'll stuff his head when we get the hat done, so that we don't stuff it too much and have to unstuff it. and then cut your knot so it's about a 1/2 inch from the end. And then we're going to cut this. We're going to first pull our gathers up and kind of distribute them, make them so they look nice, so they're nice and even. And then you'll usually find out what side where you want the front to be. So you want to pull this up before you cut all this extra off. And then you can save this, if these pieces are big enough, you can save these for shoes, for hands, mitts, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to save some of the bigger pieces. My scissors are not very good. I find my other. I gotta have my husband sharpen my scissors for me. So I'm going to keep all these bigger pieces, cut off the little end pieces, and I have to start writing a list of fabrics that I need, and then I bring them with me. I have a little scrap just so I know I can get the same one, and I just put them on a safety pin and then throw them in my purse. So we're just going to put a little bit there, and that looks pretty good. So let's do his hat. So I cut a piece and I backed it with any kind of like a felt or a fleece, just to give the hat some body so it stands up more. And this is 5 inches by 10. Okay, and I will have these in the description box. So you're going to need both of those cut the same. And then for the brim, I took a paper plate and I just pinned these together. I took a paper plate, which is about 7-inch diameter circle. And you're going to end up cutting some out, but I would rather have it larger just in case your hat is bigger, and you're going to cut that out. And then I cut a 4-inch, just a little shy of 4-inch diameter circle, and put that in the middle and drew around it. I'm going to do this on the wrong side because I don't want put your right sides together so I don't have my markings on the front. And they wouldn't show anyway because when we sew it on the hat. So you're going to trace around here. And then I fold this in half. And why do I keep losing my scissors? And then I just make a cut. Make sure you don't cut all the way to the other side. And then open it up. And then you're going to cut on that line that you drew. And you're going to cut this circle out. And if you want to pin the edges together, you can do that. And that'll help keep it in place. Now I could keep this for shoes, and I might, because one set of the shoe I made, I did them in the pattern, but today I'm going to do it in the orange, and it was out of the circle. So you can use that. I will show you how I did that. So we'll save that. And so this is going to be our brim. And when you start, I'm just going to go right into showing you how to do the blanket stitch. And I'm not going to do this whole thing because it can take a little bit. So I'm just going to make a knot. I'm going to do our surgeon's knot, which is over 3 times, and then pull it. And then I do a regular knot. You can do just 1 layer if you want of your fleece. You don't have to do 2. I just wanted it nice and stiff. So let's pin these together. And I'm going to have to bring you a little closer so you can see what I'm doing. And this is not cut out perfectly. But this I just did for a sample. So when you cut it out, make sure you cut your edges nice and straight. and so that you don't have unevenness when you're sewing it together. So let me get you closer. Okay, so you're gonna start, and we're gonna cut this tail off of our thread. So you're gonna, where the knot is, okay? And I'm using embroidery floss. And so we're gonna start like this is gonna be the back of the hat, because when I did this, I ended up cutting some off because I had made my hat. So we're gonna go, you would go all the way around and then stop. I would stop, I probably cut off about 2 inches, okay? But you can just go so far and stop. So then if you have to go further, or, you know, if you just cut it and sew it together like that. So I will show you. So what you do with the blanket stitch is you're gonna go in between these, and you're gonna go like right about there. And you're gonna pull that up, and that's where you gotta cut your thread off. And then you're gonna go down underneath, and you're gonna come back up in the same spot where that thread is, and you're gonna catch that loop, and you're gonna loop your needle through there twice. Okay, so now our thread is here. And this is how I started doing it, because I started doing some hats, and I have a gnome with the buffalo plaid that I'm going to show you also. I'm going to do a video on. So I did this in the crochet thread. And so how I found out to do it faster is I keep my thread so it's where the needle, you're going to take your needle and you're going to make sure your stitches are pretty even from here, and the same going across here. So we're going to go down, and it's about, you can go down as far as you want, but it's about 1/4 of an inch. So you're going to go through both fabrics, and when you come up, you're going to go, you're going to have that needle like that. You're going to go through, so this is underneath your needle, and that gives you that line, that stitch going across the edge. And some fabric is a little tougher to go through than other fabric. So you're gonna go, this is really thick. If I were to do this, I probably would just do 1 layer of this. This is not as, this is thicker than the orange. So I'm just gonna take a second and see, make sure you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna bring you a little closer. Okay, so we have our thread underneath our needle and pulling it through both layers. And your stitch length and your width, you want it to try to keep it pretty consistent. So there, I mean, the first way when I learned how to do this, the lady would put it through. She was like this. She would go through, and then she would do this, and then she would have her loop, and it's like, that's a lot of work. So I figured out, and this, maybe somebody has already done this, but I figured if I just do this and keep this thread here, I don't have to take that extra time putting it through the loop and pulling up my thread. So you're going to go all the way around, and you don't want your stitches too far apart. You can do them closer, They do this, and if you're doing applique, quilting, anything like that, so your thread goes underneath. Okay, so then let's say we get all the way to the end, and you're gonna cut, and you're gonna have this, you're gonna probably cut out a couple inches. That's about what I cut out. And then you would just sew these together. I just did a kind of like a little running stitch, and then I just knotted it. And it's going to be the back of the hat, so nobody is going to really see that. Okay, if you wanted to hot glue that, you could do that too. Okay, so you're going to do your blanket stitch, and then when you come to this end, you're going to have your hat already done like this. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So we'll get back to that. And there are videos on there on how to do the blanket stitch. Okay, so we got this is for our main body of our hat is this. And I'm just going to do this on the machine. If you're going to do it hand sewing, you're going to do a running stitch down, and you're going to go back. So you're going to make sure that you can, if you've got a stitch every other place, when you come back, you're going to put a stitch where there is not one. So you're going to kind of have stitches going all the way. So I'm just going to sew this on the machine quick. Okay, so I just sewed that, a little bit more than a 1/4 inch maybe. And so we have our circle. So with, I need my circle for my hat. I had one. Oh, here it is. So I cut out, and I just used whatever scraps I had. So I had some gray felt, and I cut out 2 circles. It's a little bigger, but it doesn't matter. Cut that off. So we're going to take, and we'll hand sew this on, and I'll show you how I do it. So you're going to take and you're going to pin this, and this is kind of the way I did like my bumblebee gnome. You're going to line up, start with one edge. I usually start by the seam, and I'm going to back you up a little bit. Well, I don't want to get you too far away. I'm going to get you back because I want you to see when I stitch it. So you're going to line up your edge of the main part of your hat, this, and I've got threads already all ready to go, and I'm sure they're going to get all tangled. And the top of the hat, the circle. And you're going to go all the way around and pin it, because you're not going to be able to try to keep it sewed on and in place without pinning it. It's going to save you a lot of headache. So I just start at one end and go all the way around. And if it's extra like that, that's fine. If we need to adjust it when we get to the end, then that's when we do it. So I always make my circle bigger, and it usually works out that I have enough that if I have to cut it off, if it's too small, then I just cut a bigger circle. So this hat you could probably glue the edge, the side seam of right here. You could probably glue that. But you have to let it dry really good before you start messing with it. Okay, so I have just regular thread, and I've doubled it and tied a knot, and I'm gonna start just right down here by the seam, and I've got a fairly decent long needle so that I can take and push my fabric onto my needle. That's going to be quicker, and I'm going to pull my needle out, my pin, as I'm sewing it. So, and I'm taking fairly decent sized stitches. And if you need to, if your needle gets stuck, which mine usually sometimes does, it gets hard to push through the fabric, I'll show you what I do. I will put it in, and if I can't get it in, then I put it on my cutting mat and push it down. Or if I have to pull it with the needle nose pliers. But this is the quickest way, is if you have a decent sized needle, a longer size, and then you're just putting that fabric on the hat. And then we'll take a look when I get done here what it looks like if I don't go around again. But when I did my other one, I went around twice. Getting everything tangled up. Because we're going through 4 layers of fabric, so you can't use a really tiny skinny needle. Well, you could, I guess, if you can, but I like the bigger, longer ones. And then we're back to where we started. Okay, so we'll take all our pins out and we'll turn it inside out, or right side out, and see if we need to do another line of stitching and see what it looks like. Because you can see this one I hand stitched, okay? And you can see, here's the difference. You can tell that I machine stitched that one and I hand stitched that one. So let's put this out, and I'm going to do another row because I don't like the way it looks. I can see my stitching. This one I did 2. Okay, so we're going to turn it back out, or the inside out, and now when I go, you can see the spots where I don't have a stitch. I'm going to put a stitch in there, so I'm going to go down. So my thread is right here, and I'm going to go down by that stitch and come up on the other side of that stitch. So there's my stitch, here's my thread, I went in here, came out here. And you're going to go all the way around like that. And you can do this with anything. Okay, so I'm going to show you again. There's my stitch. So I'm going to come up right there. And the next stitch is right there, so I'm going to go down by that one. And you can push this on your needle like you did before. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, because nobody's going to sit there and pick your gnome apart. They're just going to notice how cute it is. And let me show you what we've done with the stitching so far. So now we have stitches going all the way across, all the way around, okay? have to check my camera again. So I just want to make sure you guys are able to see this. So you can do this kind of stitch and stitch this seam together here. You can do that too. I just wanted to get going on this. It's going to be probably a little longer video when there's hands and feet. And hand sewing, because I know there's some people that they don't hand sew, maybe they don't machine or hand sew. You just probably have to try hot gluing on your own, because I only certain parts of the gnome do I like to hot glue with the fabric and stuff like that, because I just want it to look nicer. And then I just take a stitch up right here by the seam, because nobody's going to see it. So I get a loop, and I lost my loop. So I got my loop, and I'm going to go like 3 times with my needle in that loop. And then I'm going to do it again and do just probably 1. So you can tie it off, knot it off any way you want. If you want, just leave a little bit of a tail. And if you want to put a little hot glue on there and let it sit, you can do that. That's fine. Okay, see, now you can see the difference. So go back and look before we did the second round, and you can see a difference, okay? This one I machine sewed. So, I mean, you can see a little bit of a difference. I have to look. Yep, I did. So, but I just think that turned out so cute, and I like that it's stiff and it stands up, okay? So now we're going to take our brim, and I got to get my needle, and we're going to use the same kind of thread, and you're going to take and match up your seam on your, so now is when the time is when you had, let's take this one just to use it for example. So if you want to wrap it around, and if you have to pin it just to see where it's at, then do that before you cut it. So like here's one part right there. And I'm going to tell you what I did now that I'm doing this. I did almost the whole thing, except I stopped about 2 inches from where I started, okay, on the blanket stitch. So if I hadn't cut that, oh, I'm trying to find a circle. So if I hadn't have cut this, I would have cut it, because this piece is what I cut out. So I started here, and I would come all the way around, and I'd stop about 2 inches from where I started my blanket stitch, okay? So started here, I actually cut it before where I started, but I would stop about 2 inches from where I started that blanket stitch. I would stop 2 inches doing that blanket stitch from the beginning, if that makes sense. And then pin it, get your hat, main hat done, and then cut it right next to your, like I would cut that, that's where I would cut it, is right there. My blanket stitch would be all the way to the end though. Just make sure you don't cut your blanket stitch. And then you're going to pin this on. And you might, when you do your blanket stitch, before you figure out, before you pin it on, figure out what side you want to be the top and the bottom, because the stitch can look a little different, okay? So this would get pinned on. And then you would hand sew this on just like we did this part. And so that's what I have. I still have extra. So I would come up to here and I would cut enough off so that I would still be able to sew these two together. Okay. So I'm going to show you on this one. I'm going to see if I can, I don't know if I can without wrecking my, I'm just going to take this seam out so that I can kind of show you. Hopefully it doesn't wreck my blanket stitch. But I want you to be able to see exactly how I do it. And I'm going to try to get all my stitches. Okay, I'm not going to let you sit here and watch me do this, so I'm going to fast forward through this part. And I really got to be careful because I don't want to lose my... Well, if I have to... Okay, I'm going to leave that little knot on because I think that is the end of my... That is my back is sore. I've been walking. That is part of my thread from my blanket stitch. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna figure out, I want this on the top, so I've got to put whatever side you want as the top, you put right sides together, okay? So you're going to pin that, you're going to leave it go a little bit over like a 1/4 inch or so. I think I got to sit down, my back is sore. So you're going to start pinning it. And you're going to pin these, you're going to get these right close, the edges right next to each other. And you could make your hat shorter if you didn't want it as tall. Then you would, because this is a 5" by 10". 5 inches is the height. And you could make it a shorter hat if you wanted to. See, now I just got myself in trouble because my brim is too long and I finished this before. So, okay, so here's what I did. I need to cut all of this off, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down here, and then I'm going to have to pick this thread like that, because I didn't want to cut it there, otherwise I wouldn't have anything to tie my knot. And now that I did that, now I'm going to thread this, if I can get it threaded, if I have a needle. We'll just use, that one's really too long. Actually had to buy some more. So I'm just going to thread this. I don't have to knot it because it's attached. So I'm going to take, I think I need to do one more little blanket stitch. And this is a really fat needle, and when I think they're fatter, they're hard to get through with all that fabric. So there you have one more blanket stitch. So now I'm going to sew before I start sewing my hat, my brim on my hat. And my brim is a little bigger on this end. I really need my husband to sharpen my scissors. Okay, so I'm going to put these two together, and my needle came out. And then I'm just going to sew some stitches and sew these together. And I can't get through with that fat needle. That's more for yarn. Okay, so we have this. I'm going to show you again. Everything is pretty even, pretty close together. So we're just going to put these together, and we're just going to do some stitches and sew this seam together. See, I'm still having a hard time getting through my fabric. So I gotta go, I can't go through all 4 at once. So I got these needles I got at Walmart, and they didn't have longer, thinner ones, and JoAnn's had already been closed. And we could have glued this too, which I maybe should have. So now I'm just going to take up a knot. And I'm calling it good, and I'll probably hot glue it. So now we're going to pin. And then I gotta try to go through all this stuff, but I have a thinner needle. So let me make sure you guys are still seeing here. Yep, we're at 35 minutes on this video, so it's gonna be another longer one. Okay, so let's sew. And I'm gonna see if I sit down, if I have, because my I'm going to bring it a little closer. Okay, so we're going to sew this on, and then I will pause the video and finish sewing it. But we're going to sew it. Oh, I can't sit. So a thinner needle goes through a lot easier than those big old fat things. And then I got my knot, and I got to cut my tails off. So you're going to do your running stitch just like we did on the bottom. And I don't think you could glue this on. I don't know if it would work because it's the brim and... Oh, for heaven's sake. Okay. Too much stuff in the way. So I just push the material on the needle. I try to come out on this side and not on the inside. Then it goes quicker when you do it that way. You're taking big stitches, but that's okay. And try not to make sure you don't pull it so you're gathering it. So we don't want to gather it because you got to get it on his head. And you can go closer to the brim of the edge of the hat, but I'm just trying to get this done. So I'm going to finish this and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So what I did when I got done sewing this on, so you can see all my stitches, so I made sure, and then I turned it over and I could see my green stitching here. So I just took my thread, and you could use, I used a gold because that's what I had, and you could use orange, and then I sewed this seam again, so I hid my green stitches. Okay, so I would do that. And now I'm just going to knot this off. And there's our hat. Okay, so now we can take, and I have my nose done, and I have a video for that, so I will link that below. And I like big noses on gnomes. So let's see, we're going to do this as the front. So you're going to put his nose on. You leave your threads along so you can wrap it and get it nice and tight. And I've had a hard time getting this fabric at JoAnn's because it's like you can't get it online. You have to go to the store if they have it there. So I ordered like 4 yards. I wanted to get more. And I was in Duluth, Minnesota for my class reunion on the 7th of August, and I went to JoAnn's because I had ordered it, was going to pick it up, bought a whole bunch of other stuff and forgot it. And then I got home, which is 150 miles from Duluth, and realized I didn't have it. And they couldn't ship it or anything. Okay, so we got our hat done, and now we can put it on and see if we have to unstuff his head or stuff it. And it's actually good just the way it is, so we're just going to tie it off. And before we put his hat on and everything, we got his arms to do. Like I said, this will be a little longer video because I like to give you guys more options, and instead of just making the same old gnomes. And then we have his beard, and let me find that. See if this is going to be big enough. That should be good. So we're going to glue his beard on, and I've had those in my videos before. You just cut just the backing. Do not, and I use small scissors, I don't use big ones. Do not cut all the way through. I'm going to back you up again so that you can see. I had some here and I don't know what I just did with it. Okay, so I'll show you quickly. I show it about every video. Small scissors. I can't use an X-Acto knife. And you're just going to cut the backing. You're not going to cut all the way through. If you go all the way like this, you're going to have a blunt cut. You're not going to have the nice shaggy. And you cut, and you still have your fringe. Okay? So I usually cut it in a shape like this, sometimes to a point. And all my glue is probably dried on me. So we're going to lift up his nose, put it underneath his nose, make sure those gathers are underneath the beard. Okay? And then you're going to glue the tabs along right up next to the nose. Don't get any glue on his nose. And don't forget your wine when you're crafting. Okay, so his arms. And I was doing them and I sewed them, but I'm going to show you how if you don't want to sew them. I got to get some gnomes out of the way. So I sewed them and I sewed it like that. And this is about 3 inches wide, and the fabric had a little fringe on it, and it's like I didn't feel like hemming it, so I ripped it so it was a better fringe, and then I took a needle and picked out the threads, so now instead of hemming it I have a fringe. So if you don't want to do it that way and you want to hot glue it, you're going to take a piece and you're going to take the small curlers from the Dollar Tree, and if you're going to make a hand, like I have this one that I have made that's like this, and I fold it. I'll show you how I fold it. I just fold it and glue it so it's like a tube, okay? And then I do like that, and you can either put it in his arm and tie it off, or tie it off and then put it in. So when you do, if you're going to do it this way, you're going to need some space down here to put this hand in so that you can tie it off. So what you're first going to do is you're going to glue, put a little glue on one edge, and you're going to fold it over so that you have a nice finished edge. And don't take too much, or you can use a bigger piece of, cut your fabric a little bigger. And then you're going to take and put a little glue along the edge that you didn't fold over. And I went up here. Don't go up where you're not going to have any. I'm just going to wipe it off because it's low temp. Because you don't want that to stick to this. So just where the curler is going to go. And then you're going to put some glue on this seam. And then you're going to roll that over until it sticks to each other. And I got to get my glasses on, and I could have had this a little bigger. Yeah, I needed to have this a little bigger. This would be really small to try to get this in there. So if I did this, I would do a bead for his hand. Okay, so that's how you can do your arms. And then you would put that on. But I put these on. I don't put any stuffing or anything in here. Okay, so this is how I did the hands. Is I just took and I put some glue. I cut these. Oh, let's see, the hands were 2 inches wide. So I fold this over and then puts a little glue there. And I try not to put a lot of glue, so I want to keep it so it's soft. I don't want it really stiff. And there's your hand. So now we're going to take, and I'm going to tie this off a little bit. So if you wrap your thread around your hand like 3-4 times, and then I would cut these a little bit longer, then you can shove it in the sleeve. So let me show you how I did that. You got to have a long enough piece of string, and this is 2 inches by about 4. So you're going to take one, leave it long enough, and you're going to wrap it around. And then you're going to pull both of those threads. And then you're able to tie your knots and not have it come undone. Okay, so now I got to try to get that in here. So I just sewed these together, and I'm going to shove it in first before I do any gluing. And you can make hands however I've had other videos where I've made them differently. And you're going to put your seam on your sleeve. I'll show you in a second here. So there's my hand, and my seam is going to be lined up with this opening here. Okay, so then you can put his rake in there. Okay, and I'm going to take, I had I'll take some embroidery floss and tie that off, and then when I get it tied off, I'll put some glue in there. But I want to make sure I get it tied off first. If you just want to use a bead, if you don't want to do arms, you don't want to do legs, you can just make the body and the hat. You got to try to make sure you get the hand tied with the thread also. And then before I knot this a second time, I put a little dab of glue because this crochet thread has a tendency to come undone. And I don't know if I'm going to get any glue in there. Oh, pardon me. So I'm going to wipe my glue gun tip off. And I'm going to put a little bit. So I got right up to the edge of my fringe. So yeah, it's probably better when you have a fringe like this to put the glue on and then tie it off. Okay, so let's do this other one quick. And I know this is a long video. We're getting done though. So I gotta get this turned inside out. so now with this one, I'm going to glue it before I tie it off. I gotta try to get it in there. Okay, so lift up, make sure you don't have any glue on your tip. Tie, and you have to make sure, because the ties are going to be on the outside of the arm, the seam is going down. So you can use whatever you want to tie off, but it seems like I always tie my arms off, my hands, so it just secures it a little bit more. You might have to hold down your thread so you can knot it. And I didn't get my glue in there. Okay, I'm going to take a break and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. So let's glue his arms on, and the seams go down. And if you want to pin them and see how long you want them, I just put a pin in the back. And if you want to leave them longer and then you want to, you know, like bunch them up, you can do that. And I need to look and see. So he's going to be right about here. And I'm going to cut some of this off. I always put glue inside the arm, and then on the outside where I'm going to glue it, and then you have to make sure you get his beard out of the way. And then we have to get that up far enough so his hat will cover it. So you're going to glue it right around the back of his neck and make sure both arms are the same length. And then we're going to glue those a little bit more under there. Okay, so we're going to let that dry. And let's see, what do we got? We got his feet. And okay, let me see if I can bring you over to the machine and show you how I sew his. Okay, so we're at the machine, and I'm going to show you how I sew this little piece. And I think we need some light. Okay, so I'm going to match these up, and I don't really pin them. I got right sides together. And I start at the back of the top of the foot. Take a really small seam, back stitch, and you're going to go really slow. And you're going to turn this as you're going around the shoe. So I cut it out, and then I turn it and sew it, or turn it as it's sewing, and then back stitch, because you have to turn it inside the right side out. So that's how I did that one. And if I were to do this little piece that's from the middle of our brim of our hat, I'm going to start over here, and I'll show you when I get done. So you're turning your material. And I'm going to kind of make a rounded part on the back and then just come straight up, and you'll see my stitching when I get done here. Okay, let's go back over to the work table. Okay, so let me show you what I sewed. So that's where I started, was right here, went around, down, and came up, okay? And let's see if it matches the other one I had. And if it doesn't match, if it's a little off, it's too big, then I sew it and fix it. And the one is pointier than the other, so I would take some of that point off, and then they would be the same. But I'm not going to do that right now because I'll use those for a different time. But we have our other one. And you're going to turn this right side out. I really don't cut any of the inside seam unless it's really a lot. And then we're going to stuff his feet, and I don't sew them shut, I just tuck some of that top part in and glue it. Okay, so now we're going to try and stuff this little baby. And you can stuff it as firm as you want to. Okay, let's do the other one. And then what I do is I make sure all the stuffing is down in there. I put some glue in there. Put some glue in the foot, in the shoe. And then tuck that in down in there. And that's not going to get seen because it's going to be glued on like this. Just like these ones, okay? The feet are going to go up. The feet. So we're going to let that sit, and we'll do the other one. Put glue inside. Make sure you put enough. And tuck that in. And we'll let that sit. And we can put his hat on. Make sure I have everything done. And then if you want to scrunch his hat, you can push it down. If you want to glue it in a few spots, you can do that. So we're just going to glue this down in the back here. Make sure we get his arms covered up. And we're going to glue a little bit on the nose, so be careful with his nose. And then pull that up a little bit. And then glue the sides, get his beard out of the way. And press that down. And do the other side. I'm running out of glue. And now we're going to get his beard out of the way. And then you're going to just put inside here, you're going to put glue, but don't put too much because it'll squeeze out. And then I kind of spread it around. And then make sure you know where you want them. If there's any fur or strings on the body, make sure you get that off. If you want them pointing out, if you want them pointing up. And then you're going to do the other one. You're going to put glue in there. Kind of spread it around. And just make sure you get both feet the same. And we'll let that dry a little bit. And I'll show you how I did his rake. So I took 2 brown pipe cleaners and I bent them in half. And then I twisted them. Okay, and then I only got up so far because I need to make the little rake prongs, or whatever you want to call them. Oh, I know I had my... So then you're going to take the ends and I bend those down so they're not sticking out. And we're going to cut these off so they're all the same. Okay, now bend those down. And if we need to, we'll probably twist our rake up some more. And this is not a toy because this is going to have some sharp edges. So you're just bending those, all 4 of those down. You could do a different color if you wanted. And then you're just going to take the tips and bend those over like a rake. And then spread them out. And then I just took a short piece of a black and wrapped it around the top by the rake. And there's our little rake. And then what I did was I took some green embroidery floss and just tied around the rake up here just to add some little prettiness. Gotta decorate the rake. And I just tied it in a knot and put a little bit of glue before you do pull the second knot tight, and it will hold it. And you can mess up a little too much glue. And then we can put this in his hand and tuck it in there. And I'm not going to decorate his hat. You can decorate his hat however you want. I put some leaves, and what I do with my leaves is I will pull, and of course I don't have any on there. Like on this one, I would pull this plastic stuff off so that I'm able to, if I need to bend the leaf a little more or whatever. And of course I can't get this off now. So I would just pull that off when I put the leaves on my hat. You can leave it on if you want, but I like to take them off. And then I put a flower, and I had some other embellishments. I put a few little twigs, and there we have our fall gnome. So if you guys like my videos, hit that subscribe button, click on the bell, and that will notify you each time I upload a new video. If you already have subscribed to my channel, thank you for joining me. And thank you guys for watching and supporting my channel. When I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to do a giveaway, and I'm at, last time I looked, 855. 858, sorry. And then when I reach, when I just reach 1,000, because I'm pretty close to being monetized also. So I will have a giveaway. It must be a subscriber, and it's going to be the US only, because it's very expensive to mail overseas. I'll see what happens. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.